I never thought my own son could leave me alone on my 72nd birthday. Yet there I was, standing in the lobby of a senior living facility in Florida. My suitcases at my feet, my hands trembling, and my heart breaking. The air smelled like bleach and cafeteria food, and the woman at the front desk gave me a polite but distant smile. "Mrs. Thompson, welcome." The word welcome tasted bitter in my mouth. A week ago, I was living in my own home, surrounded by my plants, my books, my memories. Now, on the day I should have been celebrating another year of life, my son had driven me here with a sad smile and a half-hearted promise to visit. He hugged me, but his arms felt cold. "You'll be safer here, Mom," he'd said, avoiding my eyes as he hurried back to his car. I watched him leave through the glass doors, the Florida sun glaring off his windshield, wondering if I'd ever see him again. I never thought the person I raised would abandon me like that. But life has a way of turning pain into power. And exactly 1 week later, I hit the lottery. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, hit that like button, share where you're watching from, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Now, let's dive in. Mildred Thompson, 72, a retired school librarian from Florida, always put family first, known in her community for her warm heart, quick smile, and unwavering belief that family was everything. She'd spent decades caring for others, but now found herself alone on her birthday in a place she never imagined. I'd always believed in family. That's what my mother taught me, and that's what I tried to teach my son, David. Growing up in Michigan, I raised him alone after his father passed away in a work accident when David was just 7. It wasn't easy. Long days at the library, tutoring after hours, and packing lunches on a shoestring budget. But I made sure he never felt the gap his father left behind. After David got his degree, I felt like the sacrifices were worth it. He moved to Florida with his wife Kristen for his new job at a tech firm. When he called and said, "Mom, we'd love to have you nearby," I felt like my prayers had been answered. I sold my little house in Michigan, packed up all the memories, and made the move south. Florida was supposed to be my retirement dream. I pictured beach walks, warm mornings, and being close enough to watch David's family grow. Instead, I found myself in a small condo, cozy but lonely, waiting for a call that sometimes didn't come. At first, David and Kristen would visit on weekends, taking me to dinner or bringing the grandkids to swim in the community pool. Those days felt like blessings, but over time, the visits grew fewer and the calls shorter. Kristen was always too busy with the kids, and David seemed preoccupied with work. I told myself they'd come around. Family was everything, after all. I even babysat the little ones whenever they needed, sometimes for days at a time, so David and Kristen could go on business trips or weekend getaways. I didn't mind. That's what grandmothers are for. I started cooking their favorite meals, pot roast, cornbread, and banana pudding, hoping it would bring them closer. I clipped coupons so I could treat the grandkids to ice cream. And every time David mentioned a new bill or a surprise expense, I reached into my modest savings to help. "It's just for now," I'd tell myself, because what's money compared to family? But then came the birthday that changed everything. I woke up early, hoping for a call from David or maybe breakfast with the grandkids. Instead, Kristen showed up with a suitcase and a carefully rehearsed smile. "David and I think it's time you had more help, Mom," she said. She said the senior living place had everything I'd need. 3 meals a day, activities, even a little patio to sit on. "Just for a while?" she added. David didn't even come himself. He'd texted me that morning. "Happy birthday, Mom. Kristen will explain everything." I felt like I'd been erased in a single sentence. I didn't argue. I didn't want to ruin the day for them. But inside, I felt like the walls were closing in. I'd spent my whole life believing that family was forever, that sacrifices would be repaid in kind. But in that moment, I realized maybe I'd been wrong. It was the kind of sunny Florida morning that usually promised beach picnics and ice cream cones. My birthday. I was in the small condo I'd moved into just a year earlier, holding on to the hope that David would come by with the kids, maybe even bring a cake. I'd even laid out the good dishes and set out the table runner he'd given me years ago, a little touch of home from Michigan. The phone buzzed, and I rushed to it like a schoolgirl hoping for her first date. It wasn't David, it was Kristen. "Hi, Mildred. Happy birthday. Listen, we're swinging by to pick you up for a surprise. Don't pack a thing, just come as you are." I wanted to believe her. I really did. I put on my best blouse, the one with the blue flowers he'd always liked, and dabbed on a bit of perfume. I even pinned on the silver brooch my late husband gave me. When Kristen arrived, she didn't smile. She barely met my eyes as she led me outside. David wasn't there. I felt a twinge in my chest, but I told myself he'd be waiting at some fancy restaurant, maybe with the grandkids hiding under the table with balloons. I didn't ask questions. I just followed. We drove for 20 minutes, the Florida sun beating down on the windshield, while Kristen made small talk about how busy David had been at work lately, how the kids were just a handful, and how much she admired my strength. I nodded politely, but my heart was thumping so hard I could barely hear her. When we pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. The sign out front read, "Sunset Palms Senior Living, where comfort meets care." I felt the air leave my lungs. Kristen parked, turned off the engine, and finally met my gaze. "Mildred," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "This place is wonderful. They've got a great cafeteria, activities, even a garden. You'll love it here." I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. "But my home? David didn't say—" Kristen's expression hardened just for a moment. "David thinks it's best. You've been having trouble keeping up lately, and the stairs in your condo? Well, it's just not safe for you anymore." I blinked. My knees felt weak. "The stairs? I walk every day, Kristen. I've never even missed a step." She cut me off, her tone brisk. "David's at work. He couldn't get away. But he wanted me to tell you this is for your own good. We've already moved some of your things. The staff here knows you're coming." She gestured toward the building. "They're waiting for you inside." My world spun. My home, the one I'd sold everything to buy, gone. My birthday, spent in the parking lot of a place I'd never even seen. I clutched my handbag like it was the last piece of my dignity. "You can't just leave me here," I whispered. Kristen sighed, exasperated. "Mildred, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We've got a family to think about. You'll be safer here, and you'll get to make friends, people your own age." Her voice dripped with condescension. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the cold calculation behind the polite smile. I knew, in that instant, that David hadn't planned any birthday cake or grandkid hugs. He'd sent Kristen to do his dirty work. Tears blurred my vision as I stepped out of the car. I felt like a package being delivered to its final destination. I turned back, hoping, praying, she'd say, "Just kidding, let's go home." But she was already in the driver's seat, door shut, engine humming. She didn't even wave as she drove away. I stood there, alone on my birthday, at the threshold of a place I didn't choose, abandoned by the son I'd given everything to. And as the automatic doors slid open, I realized the hardest part. Family doesn't always mean forever. At first, I tried to see the silver lining. The staff at Sunset Palms Senior Living were kind enough, nurses who smiled too wide, aides who called me sweetie, like I was a fragile child. They tried to keep me busy with bingo and arts and crafts. But every time I looked around that rec room with its pastel walls and dusty puzzle boxes, all I saw was an expensive waiting room for people whose families had moved on. My days blurred into a routine I hadn't chosen. Breakfast at 7:30, lunch at 11:30, dinner at 5. I found myself sitting alone at a table, staring at the bland meatloaf and soggy vegetables, thinking about all the meals I'd cooked for David: chicken pot pie, homemade pasta sauce, his favorite lemon bars. Meals that had meant something. Meals that had said, I love you. I care. Here, food was just fuel, a way to keep the residents docile and dependent. Every time I asked the staff if David had called, they'd glance at the phone log and shake their heads. Sorry, sweetie, no messages. That word, sweetie, began to grate on me. I wasn't a sweetie. I was a mother, a grandmother, a woman who'd taught high school English for 30 years and fought for every inch of respect she'd earned. I tried calling David myself, leaving polite voicemails. Hi, honey, just wanted to say hello. But he never picked up. Sometimes I'd call Kristen's number too, just to hear her voice. She'd answer once in a while, always with the same breezy tone. Mildred, we've just been so busy with the kids and David's new project. You know how it is. You're in such good hands there, aren't you? We did what's best for everyone. I'd hang up, my hand trembling around the receiver, knowing I'd been maneuvered out of my own life. They'd gaslighted me, made me question my own memory, my own strength. They said I'd been falling behind, that I couldn't manage stairs, that I'd been too forgetful lately. But the stairs? I'd run them every day. And forgetful? Sure, I'd lose a set of keys now and then, but I'd never forgotten the birthdays, the doctor's appointments, the stories David loved as a boy. One afternoon, I found the staff nurse gently suggesting I join the memory care group. My blood ran cold. Memory care? Me? I asked why, and she just smiled. It's routine, Mildred, just to make sure you're getting the support you need. But the way she said it, with that tilt of her head and that condescending smile, made me feel small. At night, I'd lie in bed and stare at the glow of the streetlight outside my window, hearing the distant laughter of staff in the hallway. I'd think about all the years I'd spent saving every dime, helping David through college, making sure he had enough for that business loan. And now, when I needed a little support, they'd shoved me in a place that smelled of bleach and cafeteria food, alone on my birthday and every day after. I wondered if David ever thought of me, if he missed the way I'd run my fingers through his hair as a child, or the way I'd stayed up all night with him when he had the flu. Probably not. He and Kristen had decided I was a burden, a line item on a budget they didn't want to carry anymore. And that thought, more than the loneliness, burned the deepest. I wasn't family anymore. I was just another resident at Sunset Palms Senior Living. One Thursday afternoon, as I sat in the garden courtyard of Sunset Palms, I met Dolores. She was 82, sharp as a tack, with a laugh that cracked through the air like thunder. She'd grown up in Miami, raised 3 kids on her own, and was quick to tell anyone who'd listen that she'd outlived all her critics. I liked her instantly. Family's a funny thing, she said one afternoon, her voice steady as she planted petunias in a pot by the fountain. They think they can write your story for you, but honey, they don't know the half of it. She winked at me like she'd been reading my mind. Sometimes you gotta take your pen back. Her words hit me hard. I'd been sitting in that facility day after day, letting my story be written by people who'd decided I was finished. David and Kristen thought I was old and useless. But I wasn't. I still had fight in me. I still had choices. I just needed to remember that. That evening, I pulled out my small, battered wallet and counted the bills I had left. Enough for a treat or two. My fingers trembled as I thought about the times I'd treated David to ice cream or bought him new shoes when he was a boy. Those were easy decisions. But this time, I was treating myself. I wanted something that felt like hope. The next morning, I asked the facility driver, Roger, to take me to the corner store on our weekly pharmacy run. He gave me a quizzical look when I asked him to pull over at a gas station. Quick stop, I said. For a lottery ticket. Roger chuckled. Feeling lucky, Mrs. Thompson? I nodded, a grin spreading across my face. You know what, Roger? I think I just might be. I walked into the store, the smell of old coffee and motor oil hitting me as I approached the counter. My heart pounded in my chest. It felt silly, almost defiant, like I was thumbing my nose at the universe. I bought a scratch-off and a Powerball ticket with the numbers I'd picked years ago. Birthdays, anniversaries, a dash of stubbornness. Back at Sunset Palms, I sat on my bed with the scratch-off in my hand, the small silver coin trembling between my fingers. Dolores knocked once before barging in, a Diet Coke in her hand. "Don't keep me in suspense," she said, her eyes twinkling. I started scratching, heart racing with each reveal. The numbers blurred together at first, but then they aligned. 3 matching symbols. My hand flew to my mouth. Dolores leaned in. "Did you?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears filling my eyes. I'd won. It wasn't just money. It was a lifeline, a chance to reclaim my dignity, my choices, my life. Dolores whooped so loud I thought the staff would come running. "Mildred, honey," she cried, hugging me tight. "You just bought yourself a pen. Now write your own story." The knock on my door at Sunset Palms came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not them. My heart stuttered as I opened the door and saw David and Kristen standing there, looking like they'd stepped right out of a pity parade. David's hair was disheveled, his eyes rimmed red. Kristen wore sunglasses indoors, but I could still see the smudges of tears, or was it desperation? "Mom," David started, voice low and trembling. We heard about the lottery." He glanced at Kristen, who squeezed his arm as if to say, "Stick to the plan." I crossed my arms, bracing myself for the words I knew were coming. "So you're here because you want something." "Mom, please," he pleaded. "It's not like that." His voice cracked. "We're in trouble, okay? We lost the house, missed too many payments. Kristen's job was cut, and my hours were slashed. We're living in a motel, scraping by. We need a little help, just to get back on our feet." Kristen finally spoke, her voice syrupy sweet. "We made mistakes, Mildred, but you've always been so generous. Couldn't you share some of your good fortune for the baby's sake?" She placed a hand on her stomach, even though I knew she wasn't expecting. A trick she'd pulled before. I felt the room spin. These were the same people who left me here on my birthday. The same ones who'd laughed it off as the best option for everyone. Who hadn't answered my calls for days afterward. Now, they needed me. David reached for my hand. "Mom, please. I'm sorry for what happened. I was overwhelmed. I thought it was the right thing. We need your help." For a second, I saw my son as the little boy with scraped knees, the one who ran to me crying after every playground fight. But then Kristen's face flashed in my mind, smug and satisfied, when she'd talked me into signing over the house. That hurt was still there, raw and deep. I pulled my hand back. "You left me on my birthday. You made me feel like I was a burden. And now, because I have something you want, you come running?" "That's not love, David. That's desperation." Kristen's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. "Mildred, be reasonable. You're old. What do you even need that money for? A few nice dinners? We're family. We deserve..." "Deserve?" My voice rose, steady and firm. "You deserve nothing from me. Not now. Not after the way you treated me. You left me in a place you didn't even bother to visit, and now you're here because you think I owe you something? I don't owe you anything." David's eyes welled up. "Mom, please, don't do this to us. I'm your son." I shook my head. "You're the son who left me behind, and now I'm leaving you behind. Find your own way, David. You and Kristen both." I watched them as they turned, defeated. The rain streaked down the window as they disappeared down the hallway. My chest hurt, but it was a clean pain, a necessary one. I had my life back, I had my strength, and I'd written my own ending. The door closed behind David and Kristen with a soft click that sounded like the end of a chapter I'd needed to finish for a long time. I stood there, hand on the knob, feeling the weight of every memory. The birthdays I'd hosted, the dinners I'd cooked, The nights I'd stayed up worrying about their bills, their kids, their future. And for what? So they could abandon me at a senior living facility on my birthday and only remember me when I was worth a dollar amount? No more. I walked slowly back to my recliner, the same one I'd sat in the first night here at Sunset Palms, staring at the blank TV screen and feeling like my life had hit pause. But today, it didn't feel paused. It felt brand new. The Florida sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft glow across the small living room. I let it warm my face, closing my eyes and breathing deep. I'd always loved this state: palm trees swaying in the breeze, the call of seabirds at dawn, the smell of salt in the air. This was why I'd moved here in the first place, to find a piece of peace after years of taking care of everyone else. I thought about David's face, so small and desperate, and the way Kristen's words had cut like knives. They'd chosen their path. And now, finally, I'd chosen mine. I'd spent a lifetime giving time, money, patience, second chances. And while I'd do it all over again for the right reasons, I'd finally learned the difference between generosity and sacrifice. Sacrifice didn't just hurt, it hollowed me out until I was just a shell of a mother, waiting for scraps of love that never came. No more. My lottery win wasn't just a financial windfall. It was a reminder that I could make my own luck, that I could build a life on my terms, not theirs. I'd already started making plans, a trip up the coast, maybe a little place by the water where I could hear the waves every morning, a kitchen of my own to cook in, not for anyone else, but because I love it. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally take that painting class I'd always wanted to try, or join the local library book club, or even volunteer at the senior center here, because there were plenty of people who deserved my kindness more than the family who saw me as a bank. As I sat there, the breeze through the open window carried the scent of gardenias from the courtyard. I smiled, letting it fill the room, letting it fill me. I'd chosen this. I'd chosen me. And as I picked up the phone to call the lawyer about finalizing the trust I'd set up, one that made sure my winnings would go where I wanted them, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not the kind you get from someone else patting you on the back, but the kind that comes from knowing you've finally stood up for yourself. Florida had given me that, or maybe I'd given it to myself. Either way, it was mine now. I thought about the question I'd been asked so many times in this place. Are you okay? I used to answer, I'm fine, even when I wasn't. But today, as the sun sank lower in the sky and the world outside glowed pink and gold, I whispered it to myself. I'm more than okay. I'm free. And I meant it. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What would you do if your family left you behind, like I was, and then came running back when they needed your help? Would you forgive them? Would you help them? Or would you stand your ground and choose your own peace instead? Tell me in the comments below. Your stories inspire me, and they remind us that we're never alone in our struggles. If this story touched you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories of strength, family, and finding your own way.